Hello, hello, sister. Welcome back to Around the Kitchen Table, our space to meet each week, just like we would if we lived in the same village, able to swing by for a cuppa, a chat, and some soul deep connection. In a world that so often separates us, this is our time to come back to the remembering of who we are, of who we've always been, when we gather in true sisterhood. I've been sitting with what today's episode needed to be, and I realised that perhaps it's time. It's time I told you more of my story, not just the shiny parts, not just the what I've built or what I offer, but the real story, the why, the ache, the becoming. So make yourself a cup of something warm, wrap yourself in a blanket if that feels good, and come closer, because this one is from my heart to yours. So welcome, welcome. For those of you watching this, watching me on video, you'll see that I am in a slightly different space. I came out of the office. I'm sat here in my lounge. That means you will probably hear the noise of the house, and that includes the dogs, a little wolf pack of 3 that are bimbling around. I tried to close the lounge door and they were like, nope, we're coming in. And so they're bimbling around, and you can probably also perhaps in the background at times hear the cows, because we live next to a dairy farm, and so we are surrounded by a herd of 150 cows most of the time, of which I love and can sometimes be a little bit testing too. So yeah, so that's where I am right now. I have a cuppa, so you may hear a little slurp here and there, because for this one, I really wanted to find a little way to get a little bit more cozy with you, to show up unapologetically as myself, as a nearly 50-year-old woman who has always had to put her face on to show up in the world, and to mask really most of how I've felt or how I've showed up. Now, I'm sat here, for those of you not watching, on my sofa, with a big hairband around my head with all of my dreads, which of course are not actually my own. Many of you might not know that, but this is my head full of extensions. I have very little makeup on, which I was going to show up with none, but actually I have no eyebrows naturally. That's a story for another day. Oh, well, actually it's not. They're just really blonde and really fair, and without them I just feel completely bald. And I've got my trackies on and I have a top on that actually is a bit risky. Now, it doesn't look very risky if you're looking at me, but I am a larger lady. Don't necessarily look like a larger lady. I have a condition called lipedema. So maybe we'll start from that body place of how much I hide. I have a condition called lipedema. I spent my life hiding my body away. I am a regular size 14. Sometimes I creep up to a 16. Sometimes I get right down to a 12, but my weight never really changes. And my weight is heavy, like I'm 16 stone, which is quite a big thing to admit kind of in these circumstances. But most of that is fluid, and I carry a lot of fluid. So for those women out there who jump on the scales and wonder, how can I get fitter? How can I get healthier? How can I do this stuff? Like, I have really had to learn how to embrace my body, and it is not easy, and it is an ongoing journey that I take all of the time, every day. So this particular outfit might not look that risky, but I have sleeves that stop here, and you can see, like, for those of you again that I'll talk you through this, but this is lipedema. So my arm stops here, and this is lipedema, and it has got increasingly worse. And this is really exposing. This is my upper arm, and this is why this top is risky, because I don't show this stuff. But this is my upper arm. So my arm finishes here, can you see? And then this is all part of lipedema. And I have it everywhere, which is unusual. Most people will have it in their legs or in their arms, but I have it everywhere. And there's little known about lipedema, and I'm not going to make this one all about lipedema. I'll share more with you another time. But it was just, I just wanted to show you, you know, that this is how much of me I hide on a day-to-day basis. And something in me right now is just done with hiding, just done with not fitting in. You know, for much of my life, I have felt totally like the outsider. You're not just a little bit different, but like I didn't belong anywhere. Like at school, I didn't fit in with the other girls. I was either too much, too sensitive, too witchy, too wild in ways I didn't even really understand yet. And while I craved a bestie, and I craved that kind of connection, and I had people in my life, you know, some of them may even see this because they're still kind of on my Facebook page, but you know, and my mum was really shocked when she read this in my story that I shared in a book a few years ago. She was like, but you were always really popular and you always had friends and you always had people around. But I never had that kind of gang, that kind of those people that were my people. And I craved that. I craved sisterhood. I really longed for it. And I really wanted to get picked for the netball team and not feel like I was just this giant burden. Like wasn't cool. I wasn't one of the cool kids. I wasn't one of the smart kids. It just was me trying to get by the best I could. I mean, now I know with an ADHD diagnosis that there was another layer to all of that. And sorry, my dog is snoring in the background. And yeah, just trying to kind of find who I was, because the truth of that was like I wanted it and I craved it, but I also didn't trust it. Because the times when the girls would be like, hey, come out, come and hang out one week, and then the next week I'd be dropped and no one would come round to call, because we didn't have mobile phones then and we didn't check out with each other. We came round to call, or we'd arrange something at school, and I'd rock up in the places that they told me they would be, but they weren't there. And things that you remember in these moments. So whilst I craved it and I longed for it, I also didn't trust it. And that truth is really like many of my deepest wounds came from women, came from girls, came from the women that were around me. Friendships that kind of turned cold, backhanded compliments. You know, people kind of say, oh, you look nice, like with a face on. The unspoken competition, especially as, you know, I grew up fast, right? I had boobs before anyone else in my year, and that got kind of, you know, the attention of the boys, not the attention that I wanted, just attention. And you know, that fully meant that I got those kind of unspoken things that you could just see, and people would move away from. And the silences that actually hurt really more than the words. The places where I was just ignored. And there was a breaking point, really. And the breaking point was growing older, recognizing that I understood more and learned how to really shrink myself. So whilst I was this big, larger than life kind of character in many ways, I just learned how to shrink. I learned how to fit into the world that I had created around me. I learned how to, you know, I could go out and buy alcohol and cigarettes because I was bigger than all the others. I didn't smoke or drink. I still don't to this day. The odd gin and tonic occasionally. But I learned that actually I could make myself useful, and I had worth because I could go and do all of those things for everybody else. I could go to the pub when I was 14. I could hang out with the older kids. I could be that kind of cool kid because that's where I fitted more than in my around my own peers. I worked from the age of 14. I worked. I never stopped working. I learned that my worth was in kind of, being grown up. So I didn't really have a childhood particularly. I grew up very fast. I was managing a coffee shop by the time I was 15. My all the weekends after school. It's madness. 16, I went into the industry that became my career for 30 odd years. I became what others needed me to be. In the spa and wellness world, the place I poured all of these decades of life into, I saw it everywhere. I saw how I just constantly shrunk to fit in. And I also saw how, women in that industry, I hated women in so many ways. And yet I created a life where I was surrounded by women all of the time. Women that wanted to look better, feel better, connect with themselves in another way. I was fortunate enough to travel and live in various countries that, the suppression of women is huge. I lived in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. I treated clients who wore abayas and covered their hair and underneath wore Gucci suits. You know, it was like the craziest world. And I still saw it everywhere. Women quietly comparing, pretending, performing perfection, like they just needed to perform all the time to feel this way. And I was right there too, doing the same. I had to put my face on every day. I had to put my makeup on. I had to look the part. I had to wear a uniform. I had to speak a certain way, look a certain way, take my piercings out, have my hair a certain way. And I did that for years, years and years, even in the years that I worked for myself, because actually that's what was expected of me. That was the uniform. That was the way I had to show up. There was something that was less professional about me if I showed up with my hair looking how it is today, without any makeup on, without the right clothing on, then somehow I was not professional enough, even though I was still doing the same work, doing the same job. It all came down to how I looked, how I showed up. And then came the real fracture. I got married when I was 20, 20, 23 the first time. And I was married for 13 months. And that marriage was abusive, to say the least. I was married to a police officer. I'd only known him 6 weeks. There's a whole backstory to this, as you can imagine. And I'll pop the link in. If you want to read my story, you can ping me a message, drop a comment, and I'll send you a copy of the book. If you want to read more. But that time, I truly, truly, truly lost myself. I had given up. I had gone to Scotland. I had no idea who I was, where I was, what was going on. And I was in a relationship, in a marriage with a Catholic man who, I mean, the terms narcissistic abuse now is quite a big one, but actually it was all of that and more. He tore apart everything that I knew about myself. And he had affair after affair after affair after affair, and I blame myself every time. I clearly wasn't doing my job as a wife. I clearly wasn't fulfilling my duty. I clearly wasn't pretty enough, good enough, all of those things. And every time I took a beating, he asked me, well, who are you going to tell? You're going to go to the police? Well, they're my friends. They're not going to believe you. Where your family are miles away. It was just crazy. When I think back now, it was crazy. And again, I could share so many more things with you about that, but really, you know, I had years of tearing myself apart to try and fit in. And then, like I said, I lived in Saudi and I came back home and I went back to Scotland thinking that that felt like the most sensible place. And then I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and all of this by the time I was 27. Told I'd been in a wheelchair by the time I was 30. Switched my life up, changed it all around, learned about chemicals and toxins, and became the most holistic I could be in my way and my life and my output. And that meant that I was the weirdo again who didn't fit in. Now it's normal life for many people, but 20 odd years ago I wasn't. And I got married again. And that was different. That was different. But I realize now that, there was so much that I didn't trust. And I didn't trust because my previous marriage and various relationships, there was so much betrayal. And the betrayal wasn't just from the man I loved, it was from women, betrayal from women. His ex-partner was somebody he was sleeping with, and she rang me up to tell me in delight and glee that, I'd obviously done something right because he was much better in bed than he was before. Something in me shattered, it really shattered. That distrust in women, it grew even more, even further. And so then I married again, and that again, like there's so much to all of these stories, but I want to kind of keep it a bit succinct today, otherwise we could be here for a really long time. I got married again. I was married for 7 years. Our relationship broke up, mainly down to mental health and abuse again. And it wasn't one-sided. I now look back and now again I know so much more about myself. I can understand why we got into some of the situations we got into. We have 2 children. They're now 14 and 20. To get my children, I had 12 pregnancies. I had 8 miscarriages. I had 2 terminations. I had my children. Just so much. So much. And then at 40, I had a hysterectomy. And I was diagnosed with something called PMDD. And again, now I know more about ADHD. I wonder how much of that was hormones and how much of it was just my dopamine levels all over the place every month. While still trying to fit in, still trying to fit into a world that just wasn't for me. And then he passed away when my children, we broke up when they were 3 months and 6. And that was a crazy time. And he died when they were 5 and 10. So I really was truly launched into single mumhood. And the betrayals of women just continued on through all of that time. He had a new partner, we were still married, they'd got engaged. He couldn't get married because he hadn't divorced me and he wouldn't sign the paperwork, and just so much, just so much. When I think about kind of all of those betrayals, time and time and time and time again. But even in that grief, something else truly stirred, this tiny whisper, a remembering that actually I didn't really come here to fit in. I came here to belong, and that's a really different thing. Belonging doesn't require me to perform. It asks me to really truly root into the truth of who I am. And even despite all of these times in my life, I still found that truth in circle. When I was invited to join in and come to a circle, there was something about that space that truly led me home to myself. And my first circle was when I was out in Saudi Arabia and I was 25 and I'd been through all of this life and I was the youngest woman in the room. And I had more stories to tell than most of them because I'd had so much life. I'm just going to have a little slap of my tea. But these women, they gathered and there were no masks and there was no hierarchy and they didn't think less of me because I was younger than them and they didn't want to fix me. They didn't want to mother me. They didn't want to do anything. Just presenced, truly presenced and witnessed. And I think that's the first time I really shared about the abuse that I'd had when I was in Scotland with my first husband and what had taken me to Saudi Arabia in the first place. Up until that time, I hadn't really told anyone. I hadn't even told my own mum because there was so much shame. I must have brought this on myself somehow. There was something I just wasn't doing right. And these women just were able to really allow me the space to hear. And something in me healed, something in me actually cracked wide open. And it took me another 20 years to really, truly lean in. When lockdown happened and I had already been involved as a single mum. So like I said to you, their dad died when he was 42. And I then really was a single mum. I'd been a single mum since the time he'd left. He'd rarely seen the children, rarely had anything to do with them. He'd gone off and he'd started a new life, right? With another woman. Now, I could never understand, I could never understand that situation because I know if someone came to me, and I did, I was a stepmom at times as well in my life. I would never ever dismiss the mother of those children, ever. I would want to, to the point where I was told I was a control freak because I wanted to organize everything. But that's because I wanted to make sure those kids had access to their dad. He had time where he had to stand up and really take note of his children. It was important to me. And yet I was again told that, I was in the wrong by the other woman. Can you see this pattern? Do you recognize anything in this pattern in yourself, in your own life, in your own childhood, in the way that you've been brought up, in the way that you've connected to other women? Can you recognize any of this? Because I know I'm not the only one. I know that my story is so many of our stories. So when I really sat and I had come out of working with 3 other women's festivals, and I was just like, there is something still amiss here because somehow I don't fit into that space. I was realizing how much I was so in my masculine. I was so driven and so kind of pushing forward. I had something to prove all of the time. More tea. Like I had something to prove all of the time. Like just being me wasn't enough. I didn't even really know now who I was. My hysterectomy sent me into a spiral of well, let's just tell you about my 40th year very quickly. So I turned 40. My business partner died 2 weeks later in a tragic road accident. That meant the business we were working on kind of went and disappeared. I had a hysterectomy 3 months, 6 months after that. And then their dad died 3 months after that. In the middle of that, I'd opened up a shop as well. And I was still parenting my 2 children, one of which was then homeschooling because he couldn't cope with being in school. Like it was big. It was big. It was crazy. And I took everything in my stride. I had some crazy relationships because I have always been in relationships since the age of 14. I didn't really know how to be by myself. And yet by myself is where I felt the safest. My kid said to me a little while ago, you were so happy then, Mum. You were so happy when actually, I love my husband. I'm married now again, third marriage, third time lucky, as they say. And I love my husband dearly, but there are ups and downs in every marriage, in every relationship, especially when you're doing the open work to heal those wounds and you're recognizing them in yourselves and each other. And my daughter says to me, I just remember those times as just being super happy. when we were by ourselves. And I recognize that, by myself, I don't have anyone else to please. By myself, I choose when I wake up, when I go to bed, how I look after myself, what I eat, you know? And I know that saying this, so many of you will connect with what I'm saying, what I'm sharing here. How many of you out there listening to this are mums, career girls, women working, CEOs, directors, amazing women, but you are still living your life on someone else's timescale? I get up in the morning when I want to. I have done that for a long time because I wait before the rest of the household. I look after myself in the best way I possibly can in the mornings. I call it my goddess morning, and I have a whole program that I can share with you about that soon. It's coming soon. I've changed it slightly to come out of that masculine drive and into that feminine flow. So that will be coming real soon. I do that every morning, and then the household wakes up. Then I'm kind of on everybody else's timescale. Even now, even with all the wisdom I have, even with everything I share, I kind of end up back in that place of like, oh, I wonder what should I cook for dinner tonight? And when I think about what I should cook for dinner tonight, I don't think what do I want for dinner tonight? I think, oh, what can I make that's that good for the family, that's nourishing, that's healthy, that I've got time to kind of create. Maybe I should create it now so that it's ready for this evening. What time will everybody else want to eat? What time will my husband be home? What will he want for dinner? I wonder what he'll fancy. I ask him, what would you like for dinner, darling? He usually says, I don't mind, you make whatever you want. We are living in each other's bubble because it's what makes life simpler, right? Or it's just easier to meet someone else's needs than it is to meet our own. How many of you are nodding along right now? Stop for a minute, pop it in the comments wherever you are. Let's start a flow of like how much of this really resonates with you. Put a big fat resonates in the chat. Like I want to hear from you. What really like resonates in this moment? Because I lost myself. I still lose myself every day, even though I know who I am, even though I have worked so hard, even though I am in this deep pace of transition with menopause, even though, I still live at moments of my day to fix and not to fix, to well to fix what I need in my head to be okay is making sure everyone else is okay. So Sacred Sister really began to emerge. It emerged in lockdown because I didn't know what else to do. I was going a little bit stir crazy. I still had a very full book of clients at that stage, a very full diary. I didn't wear a uniform. I had dreadlocks. I did what I wanted to do. I saw my clients at home around my kids, and that's how life was for the last 5 years of my therapy business. Um, and so when I created Sacred Sister, it wasn't as a business, it wasn't as a brand. Like I didn't really know what I was doing or going to do with it, but I knew that if I felt this way, other women would too. If I felt this lonely kind of pull, especially in lockdown times where we were pretty much locked at home, well, we were locked at home with our kids all of the time. Like, how could we find that connection to each other? And that's when, like many of us, I started and created the online group. And out of that, we created our first gathering, and our first gathering came, in fact, our first gathering came before the group. The group grew out of the gathering, and the gathering came from word of mouth when I just said to a bunch of women, hey, do you want to go camping at the weekend? Should we go and set up a little gathering in a field somewhere? And I had a friend with land, and we didn't publicize it. We weren't allowed. It was like, we were kind of breaking some rules, but I realized that, if you were prepared to break the rules, you probably weren't my people anyway. And so we met, and we had 144 women, a most magical number, in a field. And it was the most powerful, beautiful, deeply connecting weekend. I still think back to that one moment, and it's like, wow, And everybody, the beauty of everybody in that space, and they laughed. I remember a lady coming over to me and she said, I keep speaking to people and going, how did you end up here? Because there was no social media. I didn't share it on social media. I didn't even have a ticket link. People just had to trust and put money into my bank account. And we had the most amazing time. We co-created it, and we still co-create the gathering now. So it's not a festival, it's not an event, it's not something I put on for everybody. I just open the doors and you all arrive, and we create and co-create the most amazing village. And if you've got things to offer, you know, we've had top comedians, we've had amazing music, we've had dances, we've had the most powerful open mic sessions. We've had like creativity and art. The dog is now having a shake behind me. Creativity and art and so many things that you know, it's just powerful. It's just powerful. And that really is where the group thing sprang from, because creating the gathering, I just wanted those women to continue to have that connection and community with each other. And now 5 years later, we're 3,500 strong in the community. Our membership has been created. You know, we have what we have moving forward, and yet it's still not a business. I can't see it as a business. You know, we became a community interest company this year, and I did that because actually we need funding to get this out in the world, to really dive into the bigger mission of Sacred Sister, which is to create safer spaces for every woman to be seen, heard, and witnessed in their own lives. And that means, you know, teaching women how to create that, to break down those barriers, to heal those old wounds. You know, we're a place for the women like me, the ones who never fitted in, because we were never meant to. We were never meant to fit in. You are unique. I am unique. And I'm here now to unapologetically live as myself as I turn nearly 50. This gathering coming up in the summer is over my 50th birthday. And I've done that. You know, my family are like, so we're not celebrating on your birthday? I'm like, yeah, I'm celebrating with all the women. Because, you know, how many times did I hold a party and no one showed up? How many times did I feel left out as a kid because, you know, my birthday was sucky? It's the beginning of the summer holidays. Nobody's around, nobody comes. And my mum, bless her heart, tried so hard. And we moved my birthday and we did it at different times of the year. And, you know, but it was a bit shit. I always felt odd, even in my own birthday parties. So I want to encourage you to come to the gathering about, like, you know, not for any other reason, but to just celebrate yourself, you know. So what's your story, love? Like, I want to hear your story. This is what I want to ask you today. You know, I've shared a little part of my story with you. It is really a little part. There are so many aspects to this story. You know, but what's your story? Where have you felt like an outsider? Where have you dimmed your light or doubted your voice? Where did you learn that it wasn't safe to be fully you? And what if those parts of your story, the ones that you carry in silence, are not your shame to hold? What if there is nothing to be ashamed of in your life? They're your torch to carry forward. They're the ways that you heal, to show up and share and to move forward, to be more authentically you, to create something in your life that really works for you. So that's why the sanctuary is here, right? Like, I created the Sacred Sister Sanctuary. I laugh because I found a picture the other day. I laugh, and it doesn't surprise me. The very first women's space I held in a festival field was with my business partner, well, not with my business partner, but at his event. So he was a guy called Sunbird. He founded Sunrise Festival, and he had an event going on locally to me, and he asked me to sell a whole load of tickets for him. I'd never met the guy, and I sold all these tickets, and he said, what would you like, you know, come to the space, what would you like to do? And I was like, do you know what, I'd love to hold a women's space. Never done that before. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was like, where did that come from? I was probably 12, maybe 13, possibly even 14 years ago. How old's my daughter now? 14. So yeah, she was just like a year old, 18 months old, toddling around the place. And I was like, I want to, and it was met with some resistance by the woman that held the healing space. She's like, this is newcomer and she's coming in with her tent and it doesn't even look the part. And I had to buy I bought this big 7-man kind of huge space. And all the bits came out of it, but it was like, it was a tent, not a canvas structure. So it didn't really look the part. So we threw loads of things over it and made it look amazing. And I found a picture of it the other day, and it was called the Sacred Sister Sanctuary. Like, who would have thought? And for all these years, one of the reasons I haven't created a membership was because I didn't know what to call it. I didn't want to call it the Sanctuary because there are other places called the Sanctuary. There are other memberships called the Sanctuary. I don't want people to feel like I'm copying them or like I'm this imposter. These are the other things that I've had to really get over, especially in this women's world, you know? So I was like, just a couple of months ago now, I was like, I'm doing it. Now is the time. Now is the time. And when I saw that picture, it was like the anchor for me. We're not a course. It's not a club. We're not something you have to show up to. We're not a program. You don't have to show up every week or do anything. You know, we're there as a village, a place where you get to bring it all, your pain, your passion, your becoming, where no one's asking you to be anything other than you are, where you get to be witnessed, not fixed, held, not healed by anyone else. We're really truly honored in your own unfolding. That's what the sanctuary is. So there's the gathering and the sanctuary, and you'll see that all of these things have come out of who I am. I call myself a modern day wise woman. I've been really struggling to, what is my title? Who am I in the world? I've been working with an amazing mentor, and she's like, we need to find your niche. And I'm like, I know, but the reason I'm here is because I have no idea what it is. Because, yesterday I was dealing with a beautiful sister who needs some support with fertility. Then I'm dealing with another lady who's going through a big transition in her life and needs to make some big decisions. And she's only in her early 30s too. And then I work with menopausal women, and I work with elders, and I work with maidens. My daughter's 14 and, at her age group. And, at the gathering, we have all women. So it's really hard to say, who am I here for and what do I do? And to find myself in this kind of like, what's my title these days? Because also my title's been hung on a certificate, right? I was a holistic therapist. I was a beauty therapist. I also was a hairdresser back in the day. I'm an ordained interfaith minister. Like I have all of these titles. I've carried all of these titles because I have had the qualification. Who am I now? I'm just me. And something in me either speaks to you and you think, yeah, do you know what? I want to work with this woman. I'm working through some stuff. I'm going through, menopause. I don't know how to be in the world anymore. I guess the biggest thing I do is I support women to go through big transitions in life, really to find who you are and to stop showing up for everybody else and to start showing up for yourself first and foremost. Because unless you start showing up for yourself, the rest of it just doesn't matter, because the rest of it won't work if you're not okay. What does okay mean? It doesn't mean I'm fine, thanks. It means what's really going on. I will sit in the dirt with you always. And I've created a sisterhood that will sit in the dirt with you always. Hello, Theo. This is our youngest pup. So we have rescue dogs. And if these dogs have taught me anything, it's absolute patience, because they've been through a really, really hard time. And they're displaced from their home. And they don't really know what to do. I need to carry on. I will stroke you more in a minute. Sorry if you are listening to this rather than watching. It's all a bit bizarre today, but you know what? Hey ho, it's longer than the 30 minutes I try to keep my podcasts in. It's longer than kind of, it's a bit of ramble, but hey, that's how it is today. So Here are a few prompts before we close. I really want you to consider journaling. Come back next week because I'm going to do a podcast around journaling. In fact, I'm probably going to record it now because I'm actually in London next week at the Mind Body Spirit Fair. So if you're around in London, come and see me, come and find me. I'll have our journal with us. I went to watch an amazing sister. If you've not seen Lou in Luland, go and look at Lou in Luland. She is part of the self-love revolution. She is an amazing woman. And I connected with her recently and I went to see her in Bristol, a show in Bristol last week. And I just laughed because every time, she was like self-love. She went through all of these self-care tips and self-love tips, and one of them was journaling. And every time she went journaling, she was like journaling. It's like it's a horrible word. Like everybody hates journal, but like I created a journal because yes, I hate it in so many ways. It's like I don't have time for it. It's another thing I have to do. But actually, journaling is the way that I have really come home. That's what I was sharing about being a modern wise woman. It's the way I have really connected to my inner wisdom. That's what makes me a modern wise woman. I am sitting here, and I say modern because I carry the ancient wisdom within my bones, but I can only hear it when I stop in the craziness of this modern world that we live in. It gives me space and time to come back to myself. So here's some journaling that prompts for you. Maybe you want to come back to it later. Pause this recording, write them down. I will share them in the captions wherever you read this and wherever you see it, whether you come to us on Spotify or YouTube. Here are some reflections that I'd love to sit with, you to sit with. Where in your life have you felt like you didn't belong? Where in your life have you felt like you didn't belong? And what parts of you did you abandon to try and fit in? What parts of you? What did you leave behind? What did you let go of? What did you abandon to try and fit in with the rest of the world around you? And some of those things, let's just speak to this. Some of those parts of us we abandon, right, to feel safe or to make sure we were safe. I recognize those parts of me that because if I was truly myself and truly showed up as myself, I would get really bullied. I would recognize that I abandoned those parts, not just to fit in, but actually to create safety for myself. So what parts of you did you leave behind? And what moments really shaped your story, even if you've never spoken them aloud? What moments have really shaped your story, even if you've never spoken them aloud? And I wonder this, sister, what does true sisterhood mean to you? And have you ever truly tasted it? Have you ever truly felt like you were in a place where you were fully able to be who you are, or to even explore what that might look and feel like? To show up unapologetically as yourself? Have you ever really been in a place where that has been the case? And what are you longing to come home to within yourself? What parts of you are you longing to bring home? So I know this episode was a little longer, a little deeper. Perhaps there have been some moments should have come with a trigger warning. But I want you to know that your story truly matters. Not just the shiny parts, but the parts of you that you thought you had to keep hidden. There is a place for them here, and there is a place for you here. If this moved something in you, if you want to be in this kind of space, come and find us. We have a free Facebook group. You are welcome to come and join it. Sacred Sister Collective is our community group, our Facebook group. You're also welcome to come and find us inside the sanctuary. That's our paid membership, but there are two ways that you can join us. And because I am really wanting to make sure that the sanctuary is an open door for everybody, you can either pay a one-off fee at the moment and just become a lifetime founding member and never have to pay anything again. And you can even pay that in installments, or you can set your own price every month and just pay a subscription as and when. And £33 a month is what we have suggested that subscription is, because that's what it costs to kind of keep the platform running. But you can choose your price from £11 upwards. So my hope is that, every woman should be able to find that money for themselves. Now, that's not me saying you should be able to do that. You have to do that. You can do that. What I want to encourage you, and the reason I haven't just made it free and said, okay, everyone in, is because one, I've never had an income for the last 5 years. I have a very tolerant, amazing, patient husband, but I have to shift that. I have to shift that money story for myself. I have to shift that block for myself. I have to value myself and the work that I do enough that I say, actually, this needs now to be a paid space. But the other reason I say to you that, £11 is the minimum you can pay is because I guarantee you, if your kids needed something, if your partner needed something, even if the homeless person in the street needed something, you would probably go out of your way to find a way to pay that. And yet, will you give it to yourself? Will you give yourself £11 a month, £33 a month, £66 a month, whatever it is that you can afford, that says, hey, I am worth this? That's why there is a fee to pay inside the sanctuary. So the doors are open to the sanctuary, and so is my heart. Until next time, thank you for sitting with me here at the kitchen table today. I hope something stirred, softened, or settled in you as we shared this space. I want you to know that you are not alone, sister. You never were, and you are always welcome here. Until next time, take what you need, leave what you don't. If my words don't resonate with you, it's perfectly okay to let them go. But remember who you are when you're held in love, seen in truth, and connected in deep sisterhood. That's me for today. Signing out, Laura from Sacred Sister. Take care.